But hi, everybody. It's Friday night. You know what that means? You have the fabulous Asea 5 Plus because we can't count. So every week we have a different number. You'll just have to tune in to see how many there are. But what's that? Just what? Fantastic. So we meet every week to share information on these amazing molecules. We're all involved with what's called redox signaling molecules because they actually enhance our healing, enhance our lifestyle. And we have a number of medical professionals on here, but let me make a disclaimer. We have a bunch of doctors, dentists on here, chiropractors, money people, but we're not here to treat, cure, diagnose anything. We're just here to share our experiences and a little bit of information on what these are so that people can have a better quality of health and a better quality of life. So I'm Dr. Maureen Hayes from Galveston, Texas, and my co-hosts are Jiminy and Glenn from San Antonio, Texas. Our money man and his beautiful wife, Ann, is our nutritionist and our physical trainer. And then we have Dr. Lee Osler, who is our dentist extraordinaire from the state of Washington, also one of the founders and former presidents of AOSH, which is the American Academy of Oral Systemic Health. And tonight we have two very special guests, two gentlemen who have been with us for over a decade, I would say. Both of you have been in for longer than 10 years, correct? We have Dr. Foster Malmed from Paterson, New York, who is a chiropractor who is still in practice and uses this with his patients, and also Dr. Aaron Kaufman from New Mexico, who is also in practice. So this is really wonderful. Both of these gentlemen, he's a DO, which is a medical doctor, but also has some training in spinal manipulation as well. So these gentlemen are actually using this and promoting this in their patient population, which is really amazing. So Dr. Malmed, if you'll come on, tell us a little bit about how you got exposed to this, what you saw, what kind of grabbed your attention, and why you decided to start sharing it with your patients. Be great.
Sure, happy to. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me here, Maureen and Lee and Jim and Ann. Thanks so much. And thanks, Aaron, for joining me. It's always a pleasure. August of 2010, we're coming on 11 years. A friend from California who is a professional network marketer who I knew and trusted called up and said, I have this amazing thing I'd like you all to look at and to try and maybe join my business. And all of those things were very off-putting to me. And he said, it's an amazing product. It's for athletes. And when I questioned him a little bit further, I found out that it was a salt water product made in Salt Lake City that was network marketing. So it sounded terrible to me. But he was a friend, so we decided we just trust him and give it a shot. So he didn't know at the time that my wife had been really ill for many years. Nobody could help her. And so we started drinking this stuff, redox signaling stuff that I didn't know anything about. And in 3 days, my wife said that she felt amazing, which she had not said for 6 years. And that was really great. And at the time, I was the lone chiropractor in the hospital locally. And I said, that's awesome, I'm going to work. And this went on for days. And she just kept getting better and better and kept saying, I think we should look at this stuff. And you all may know that I'm not that nice. And so I kept saying, I don't know, dear, that's an athletic product made from salt water in Salt Lake City and it's network marketing. So I don't think that's giving you a new immune system. So I'm not going to look at it yet. And then another few days later, the story goes, and it's true that when it became about me and I had my own changes, and at the time I was 53 and my mental clarity improved and my GI system improved and my immune system improved and my energy improved. I came home and said to my wife, I don't know what's going on here, but I feel amazing. And she said, now we look at that stuff. And I said, of course, oh, you mean that salt water product from Salt Lake City in the network marketing model? That's an athletic product? Sure, I'll look at it. So I decided I'd go to the source and I read a book written by the atomic medical physicist who helped in this project. And I got halfway through and said to my wife, if this is true, then this is going to change the world. And I need to know more about it. And that's when I started learning more, started using it in my hospital with everything that you can imagine. And as I saw miraculous changes over and over, we ultimately decided we were going to do this as a business. And that was on the day that I got a several $100 payment from Asea And for Medicare, I got a check for 9 cents. And I called that a clue. And the rest is history. Now we have been part of this Asea family for, this is our 11th year, and we couldn't be happier.
Wow. I have to ask, who was your friend? I should know this, but who was your friend in California, if you don't mind sharing?
His name's Joe Locke. Now he moved to Hawaii. Nobody knows him. And
I
he
was
was
going
in
to say,
the, excuse me?
I don't think I've ever met him.
No, well, because he was in the business for about a month.
Oh.
And then he got an offer to be a senior VP in sales of some other company. So he relinquished his role. And so the person who enrolled us was gone, and we knew no one.
Wow.
And we just decided this was too important to ignore. And so we just kept calling our upline and saying, this is us and we need help because we have no idea what we're doing. We've never done this before, but this product is really important. And in a handful of years, we became triple diamonds. And it's been a joy for many, many years. It's great.
Fantastic. You know, if you don't mind taking a moment and just describe to us the symptoms that Terry had. What was she experiencing for those 6 years up to you know, before you got her on the product? Because she was a personal trainer.
Correct. She was a personal trainer, but could barely work because she had some immune system dysfunction, and it had several different names. I don't think any of them were right. And all they could do was, she was taking 20 different supplements a day. She was on 3 different medications from a couple of different doctors, and she couldn't get out of bed. Every joint hurt. She had brain fog. She was getting sad, and her quality of life was terrible. She had no energy and just was uncomfortable all the time. And 3 days in on this product, and it's so important to know, the vast majority of people are not going to notice a difference in 3 days. Give it 3 months or 3 years, whatever it takes. But she noticed it very quickly, and she stood right over on that landing up there. I was reading the newspaper back when I used to read the newspaper, and she said, I don't know what's going on, but nothing hurts. And I said, that's awesome. I'm going to the hospital to work. And I never gave it another thought until we realized she was suffering from a lack of cellular communication, repair, and replacement.
Foster, how much was she drinking in the beginning?
In the beginning, we didn't know anything other than 2 ounces twice a day. That's all we knew, and that's what we drank.
Well, I definitely want to have you cover that after we hear from Dr. Kaufman, because I definitely want to go over the suggested amount that we should use.
Sure, I'll do whatever you say, Jim. You're the one who invited me.
Hot diggity dog. Remember that, guys.
That we do. We salute you. Yes, absolutely. You know, and it's interesting because Dr. Lee does talk about that, because in Terry's case, you were saying that she was on all these different supplements, doing all of these different things. So what was missing maybe was the redox signaling. And when she took it, it was like Dr. Lee always says, flipping on a switch, turning on that internal doctor. And we'll have Dr. Lee explain that to us all in a little bit. Yeah.
And I agree. And the question was, did it just make her cells work better? And now all that supplementation that she was using that just couldn't work before, now the switch got flipped and now it worked. Have no idea. Once you look at the genetic study, we have some pretty nice ideas of what changed, but it was a godsend. And the beauty was, you know, the first thing I looked at was, would it hurt my wife? Yeah. And I looked at, is it safe? And I saw bioidentical can't cause any sort of problems at all. And it was like, what could it hurt? And it didn't. It changed our futures and the futures of thousands and thousands of people, all because we took a shot.
Hey, real quick, I want to bring this up. Because the switch got flipped on, Foster, does that mean she could stop supplementing the molecules and the switch would still stay on?
No, it's a great question. No. So she drinks plenty every day. And, you know, we learned from our genetic study that when you drink this product, your genetic expression pathways are going to improve, whether you think they are or not. But when you go back off this product after 8 weeks, they went right back to baseline where they were when they started. So once you go on this product, only if you want to have a better optimized life should you stay on this product. Don't go off it.
Wow.
Yeah, I would
Thank
say
you.
it's like diet and exercise, you know?
All
You do
those
it, yeah, you look great, you're fit, you know, you stop and you're eventually going to go back to baseline. So
Yes,
Exactly.
but Maureen, real quick on that topic, because that's what Ann is, the exercise and the nutrition, but that's not enough, right? I mean, you can do all of that, but that doesn't fix your cells, does it? Foster?
well, no,
Um,
and yeah, Foster or Aaron, go ahead and take that.
Aaron, I'll take it, and then you'll get all the rest of the talking the rest of the month. So the answer is that it's all pieces. It's all about wellness, and it's all about we must rest, we must exercise, we must drink the right things and eat the right things and do the right things and not be around the wrong things and not eat or drink the wrong things. And it's all the things that we know are good for us, but it doesn't matter what you put in your mouth. If you don't have enough balance and supply of redox signaling molecules, you're not going to do as well as if you had a replenishment of those molecules. And when you add that, it just lights everything up and makes you work at an optimal level. And that's what I think we all want.
Awesome. Thank you, Foster.
Of course.
You know, I would say also, just to corroborate what you're saying, Foster, is, you know, this is as close to, in fact, when I first started, when I first went to Salt Lake, I said, did you get the name Asea from panacea? Because it seems to just, you know, deal with whatever you have going on. It turns on cells. But I think it's a critical point to, you know, we're American Western culture so oriented towards take a pill to fix things.
Right.
And, you know, people don't want to take responsibility for their health. And what I've made my practice, I assume you do too, Foster, is, you know, based on people taking responsibility for their health. So it's not okay to drink Asea and keep, you know, eating crap American food and sitting in your chair all day and, you know, on and on and on, drinking NutraSweet and all these things that destroy your health. At some point, in the analogy of having a knife in your back, at some point you have to take the knife out to begin the healing process. So I'm total accord with that.
Thank you.
I love that. You know what, Aaron, do you mind talking? Because I was having a conversation with a girlfriend about the difference between the MD education and the DO education. You guys actually get trained on nutrition, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Well, like MDs, we got, I think, a half a day or 2 quarter days or so, a couple hours. It's nothing.
Well, hopefully that's changing in both of these. Yeah, I thought maybe you guys, because you have a little bit more of a holistic approach. You know, when I went to medical school, which was, you know, a long time ago, I won't tell you, I was an infant, like a female Doogie Howser. Not really. But we had, like you, like a half a day in a scope book with pictures of people with pellagra and, you know, you name it, and an entire year of pharmacology, you know, and that's how our medical education was, very heavy on drugs. Of course, I'm a pain doctor, you know, so I'm kind of doing penance now, you know, trying to help people in a more natural way. But it's amazing, you know, and I would love for you to speak about how you use this in your practice as well, and how powerful it is to have something that's 100% non-toxic, a bioreplenishment agent that we're just putting something back in that we maybe are off balance in or have a little deficit in. So.
And I totally am in accord. You know, it's one of those way too highly polished soapboxes that I climb up on. And, you know, you get to the point and day after day, year after year, you get tired of talking about this stuff. But American Western medicine is basically bought and paid for by drug companies. And we can go into the history about how that came about and so forth. But you figure drug companies are on the, you know, the boards of directors of all the medical schools in this country. They fund the vast majority of the medical conferences that go on around this country. They publish all of the journals, and so they have a hand in what doctors read and don't read. And they walk into essentially every doctor's office in America and say, here's this drug, and here's how to use it, and here's a free lunch, and that kind of thing. And so American medicine has become reductionistic. And, you know, I'm singing to the choir here, but, you know, doctors in America, you walk in and I've got this, that, and the other. Okay, you've got this, here's the pill for that, next patient. You know, they are not oriented towards looking at the whole patient, which is what my training was about. And, you know, obviously I've watched in my 35 years in practice, what I see coming from other physicians and now a lot of mid-levels and so forth, the care has just gotten ridiculously poor. You know, it's just, it's so, you know, cookie cutter and next patient because of insurance and all. So yeah, I love, you know, I'm sort of dyed in the wool and, you know, an addict to doing the right thing for patients and saying, yeah, here's your whole history and here's, you know, what you've got going on. Here's what you've been told and here's what we found. And then we do lab and all this sort of stuff. And we get this big picture. And always, Maureen, it's okay, you need to take the sugar and the starch and the chemicals out of your diet, eat a whole food, basically no sugar, no starch, you know, a version of keto paleo. You need to get out of your chair and walk, you know, for at least 15 minutes a couple of times every day or more. And, you know, here's all these things you're deficient on, vitamin D and, you know, B12 and folate and, you know, magnesium and on and on and on and on, as well as your hormones. And people feel when they do all this stuff, they feel like $1 million. And yeah, these redox signaling molecules, just like Foster was talking about with Terry, you know, she was doing all this stuff right, but her cells weren't talking. So here's this exquisite, you know, supplement that we have to offer people that makes everything they take, everything they do, you know, whatever is going on makes everything work better. We were talking to this guy once years ago, and it took him a while to get to really understand what Asea was. He kept sort of dabbling in it. And he worked with a lot of people in network marketing. He, you know, took other, you know, had other health supplements or whatever. And he held up this, we were on Zoom, and he holds up this protein shake or whatever. And he says, you guys need to tell everybody that your stuff makes their goo work, you know? So when you take supplements, you take anything, this is going to make your cells utilize it better. So yeah, I love it, and it's totally safe. You know, the toxicity studies are early on showed not only for athletes, there's no banned substances, but there is zero toxicity, which is kind of mind-boggling. Lee can expound on this much, much more than I can. But, you know, you figure these are essentially the most bioactive molecules, human bioactive for sure, in existence. And there's zero toxicity. You look at things that, you know, that have a lot of biological activity, and they usually have high toxicity levels. So, yeah, I love it. Zero toxicity. You know, this is safer than water.
Amazing. You know, this probably is a good time to bring in Dr. Lee and have him explain, you know, we're talking about people doing the right thing and needing that flip to be switched or switch to be flipped. So maybe you can describe that a little bit, what's going on, how these molecules are working, why it's so important to replenish them.
I'd be happy to. I really enjoyed this conversation and listening to Foster and Aaron, you know, describe. When I'm done, I'd like to direct a question their way, so don't let me forget. They both do a lot professionally with issues that I would call neuromuscular, and you know, and there's some really specific things that go on in the body that are neuromuscular or that are musculoskeletal that I think they could give us some added depth and understanding on. But the whole idea of redox, I don't want to make this a chemistry thing, but reduction, oxidation, redox is a contraction of those two words. And that describes the basic chemistry and biochemistry of everything going on in our body. We talk about cell communication or signaling. It's like, what is that? And the issue is, how does a cell know that it's in trouble? You know, how does a cell determine that it's having a problem? getting along in its environment, or because of toxicity or genetics or hypoxia or anything like that? And what does it do in as a follow-on? And this cell talk, this signaling is really what it's all about. For decades, we have known about antioxidants. We've used plant-based antioxidants for decades, and an entire industry has been built up around the use of vitamin supplements, antioxidants, to help take care of the oxidation, the free radical damage that goes on in the body that happens as a result of our cells working, even just basic mitochondria making energy, which is where our energy is manufactured in the mitochondria. We've known since forever that these mitochondria not only make energy, but they produce reactive oxygen species. You'll see those called ROS. And those are the things that antioxidant vitamins are targeting, is to get rid of those dangerous free radicals where there's highly reactive, electron movement that will damage the body and cause disease. Well, this whole idea of flipping the switch and doing the work of dealing with the cell and how to be healthy is all nested in this whole idea of cellular signaling. Derivatives of those reactive molecules are called redox signaling molecules, and that is what Foster was talking about with the genetic studies that we've done. The gene studies showed positive improvement in gene expression at the very basic DNA level of the cell that then activates the immune system. That's why when you get the cell signaling properties done right through what we call bio-oxidative or lifestyle medicine, the exercise, good sleep, stress reduction, proper nutrition, all of those enhance the native ability to produce these redox signaling. But now we have the ability, because we've figured out how to stabilize these in a laboratory, to actually supplement or replenish our cells with those very signaling molecules that activate these cellular processes that restore health. That's really the essence, that's the sum and summum bonum of this whole idea of redox signaling replenishment or enhancement, is I'm resetting the cell's ability to do the business of the cell. And that is basically activating or turning on the inner doctor. When the inner doctor healing, or I should say, let me retract that, resetting these cellular functions, when that starts to happen, then I start to have less of the symptoms that we find. What Dr. Aaron was talking about is the conventional medical approach is to provide an agent that reduces the symptom. We're just basically addressing symptom suppression. Well, when I activate the cell's ability to restore its cell signaling and its function, then those problems dissipate, they diminish, they get better. And so we don't have those diseases. This is all a part of lifestyle medicine. The interesting thing is that it wasn't in all of history. The only thing we've had for millennia is to exercise, eat right, sleep right, and reduce your stress. That was basically it. Well, now we can replenish those direct acting cell signaling molecules. We can replenish those directly, and now it further activates and it resets and restores the cell's ability to conduct its own business. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but that's how I see it.
There's a thought that's entered my head when you're talking about that we haven't communicated a whole lot, but you've communicated very clearly in some of the stuff that you've produced about that whole process. I guess it started about the 90s that people would be taking on antioxidants to neutralize the oxidants. Clearly, there needs to be a balance. The reactive oxygen species that we produce that are in, cell signaling supplements and so forth, we produce naturally, are appropriate. They signal various things like damage repair and so forth that you so wonderfully communicated about. And here's this, again, this Western medicine reductionistic approach now with some natural substances. Okay, let's throw a bunch of antioxidants at it, and antioxidants are good and oxidants are bad. Well, it's, that's just not true. There has to be this balance. And then there's the whole thing about, okay, here's all these plant-based antioxidants and I put them in my mouth, and what happens then? And how much actually gets into circulation? I mean, glutathione is a classic when people are taking all these things to enhance glutathione, and it's basically destroyed in the digestive tract. So I think there's a couple of important points with it, and this is your bailiwick, that it does have to be a balance. And yeah, we get out of balance with doing all these inappropriate things like you and Foster both been talking about, not exercising, not eating well, stressing, and so forth and so on. That's how you throw that redox balance out. And the solution, is to replenish. And the right supplements and so forth and so on. But more importantly is to pull the knife out, to do all those things that make a difference and create your natural balance.
This is an important point. I just want to echo that, because these natural lifestyle fixes, just in how you live your life, reducing stress, sleeping better, getting oxygen, not having sleep apnea, losing weight, getting exercise, all those things, those have a direct effect on the mitochondrial efficiency. That's how our body makes redox signaling molecules. And so when we're not doing those things, we're already setting ourselves up for a deficit. And here's something that's interesting, because of our decades-long fixation on exogenous or plant-based antioxidant usage. I just dug a couple of studies up over this last weekend in my book research that showed that when we're doing they didn't use the word a lot, and they didn't use the word megadosing, but but they did make reference to kind of more of the synthetic, the isolate antioxidants. So you're going to go get vitamin C, but it's isolated from all the other cofactors that vitamin C is in nature, provided to us. If we're doing that, it has an effect inside the cell to diminish signaling, because it's reducing oxidation levels, and we need a little bit of oxidation in order to stimulate the translation factors, the transcription factors that then enhance the transcription of these antioxidants like glutathione that come to the rescue. And so back to this idea, you made the comment, Aaron, of what you're using there is activating the other supplements. Well, it's because it's providing the right levels, and we know that because of the gene studies. It's providing the right amount of mild oxidative stress in the cell that activates the NRF2 transcription factors that make this whole thing happen. And that's the magic of this. It's going to be fun to watch that become common language.
Yeah. Touching on the isolated and synthetic sources and so forth, again, that same Western medicine sort of approach. I was so excited. First thing that happened when we came out with the VIA line is I went, well, they didn't ask me. This is what I do all day, every day. No, but after I got over myself, it took not too long, but then I started to look at them and use them, and I was so impressed, because they are all whole food supplements, just what you're talking about. All the natural cofactors and so forth, they're concentrates, but they're food. And so you get all the benefits that come from eating the whatever it is in its natural milieu. I was really impressed, and I continue to be. I use their supplements in my clinic. They're better than anything I've ever used, and this is my thing.
Well, that's an important point to punctuate, because we've heard from many people talk about the ability of Asea, the liquid, to be able to activate or make nutrition more bioavailable. Well, that's a multiple facet thing. It could be your GI tract or whatever. It could just be the activation thing. But I'm starting to kind of pick up on the idea that, if somebody's going out and taking a handful, you've seen these people will take a handful of supplements a day. Every day it's a handful. and they're kind of well, but in isolate, but just that can have it's like, why wouldn't you expect to be better, significantly better doing that? And many people are. This isn't a broad brush, denial to say that it isn't. But why do we see that people who are doing that and taking Asea suddenly even have another mark? Wouldn't it be enough to take a handful of even whole food nutrition? And the answer is no, because it has to do with this redox energy potential in the cell that is being diminished by those supplements. I need a little bit, it has to be a mild amount of oxidative stress to activate these gene pathways. And if I completely suppress it, then I'm just as bad. I'm not activating the gene pathways. That's why the combination of this, everything coming together, the synergism of that is so beautiful, is so great. I'd like to ask both of you a question, and it goes back to what I said earlier. As a chiropractor, as an osteopathic physician, with at least that ingrained in your approach, I've got a son who just graduated as a DO, and so I'm kind of like more conversant with this myself even. What is it about redox signaling that affects the body structurally, maybe functionally, but in the musculoskeletal, neuromuscular thing? Both of you, if you've got, I'm sure, some unique perspective on that. Why do we feel better physically? Why does discomfort diminish?
Well, I'm certain that Aaron's approach is going to be more unique than mine, so I'll speak first. So, so when you look at the history of chiropractic going back to 1895, they've always talked about this sort of esoteric theory, and I think it's maybe not to our benefit, but they've always talked about the innate intelligence of the body. And by reducing or removing nerve interference by making manual manipulations or soft tissue manipulations, we are removing that interference and allowing innate intelligence to go do its job, which is in charge of all functions. Doesn't that sound familiar, Maureen? So when I posit to other healthcare professionals and say, what do you think about redox signaling is actually innate intelligence? And if we actually took that ethereal term away and stopped calling it what it really isn't, I think, but it's actually pluses and minuses and equilibria, and it's just the balance that allows redox to work like the operating system of our cells. And it's not something magical, it's something that we can actually now study and see, and some of us use for 11 years. That's my perspective. So whether it's neuromuscular, musculoskeletal, whatever it is, if you drink this product, it's going to make anything that you're taking that's good for you work better. And anything that may be damaging, it's going to help to mitigate that cellular damage with repairs and replacements when necessary.
I love that, Foster, because really, when you talk about the innate intelligence, that's a perfect description, because we all know that if we cut ourselves, we can guarantee, 99.9% of the time that it's going to heal, right? You're going to have fibroblasts and everything else come in, lay down granulation tissue. It's going to knit back together. You're going to get a scab. You might have a little bit of scar. Over time, that scar is going to model. We know that's going to happen. We just didn't really always know how it happened. We knew that certain damage in the tissues would set off a cascade that would pull in these other cells that would stop the bleeding and start the granulating. But that's exactly what redox is. That is that signal. That is that secret communication between the cells that we never really knew or understood or even identified before. It's so cool, really. And yeah, we talk about the innate intelligence because the body really is miraculous. And when you give the body what it needs, whether it's the nutrition or whether it's rebalancing or replenishing the redox, it is just unbelievable sometimes what can take place. So I love that, Foster. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. And just to follow up before Aaron takes us out the rest of the time. So now that, we're all sort of researchers here, there's so much research now, we don't ever talk about diseases and medical conditions, but if you were looking for those things, we now see all this research about the loss of redox homeostasis, the loss of redox balance. And that appears to be a key to those of us who are looking for that if we can keep redox homeostasis and redox balance as perfect as we possibly can with this bioreplenishment product, we have a much better chance at maybe never having to deal with those things that we're researching. And that's why we drink a bunch of this stuff, because as we get older, especially, I mean, I wish I was able to start this stuff when I was 12, but I didn't start it till I was 53, and that's okay with me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had a quick question for Aaron. I was thinking about when I started on this, next week it'll be 6 years, and how impacting it was to workouts. I mean, I was already very active anyways, and then I, at that time, was teaching it. And so you go longer, stronger, faster. We know that in the studies, we know athletes just blow it up when they're on this product. But Aaron, I remember you sharing your story when you first started. I assume it was like 8 or 9 years ago. Share a little bit about, wasn't it your climbing mountains and seeing what it did on your workouts? Wasn't that part of what got you to be like, wow, what is this? Maybe you could tell us your original story of how you first learned about this and how you saw it change when you were doing your, like I said, mountain climbing or whatever, running, or what exactly were you doing when you first started?
And then you got to show us your boo-boo.
Oh yeah, that terrible cut.
The cycling, you were cycling when you get the boo-boo, right?
Yeah.
It's basically, illustrative, and of the principle that, this doesn't cure anything. It helps your body treat a lot of things, but it does not cure stupid. And so I'm here at 7,000 feet in Cedar Crest, New Mexico, on the edge of the Cibola National Forest, back of the Sandia Mountains. And for the 23 years I lived here, up until a year ago, I haven't run for almost a year because I damaged my hip, and I'm doing all kinds of stuff to get it repaired, stem cell stuff, all that, but I can't run anymore. But for 45 years, I've been a runner, and 23 years, I ran these same trails up behind my house up to 8,000 feet and back down here to 7,000, 3-4 times a week. And when I was first looking, it was introduced by a doctor friend to Asea. Like most people, I didn't, in medicine, it was 8 years ago, right about the same time Maureen came on. I knew nothing. I'd never even heard of redox signaling because it's a relatively new area of science. And so I had to do a lot of research. I went to pubmed.gov and I looked at the research that was really, really well done, small independent studies, but all of them double-blind, placebo-control, randomized, and done by Asea. And the athletic studies had crossovers and washouts, and all that's just terminology to say this is good research. Small studies, independent, but nonetheless compelling. And they were about athletes because Vertus, Norton's son-in-law, was a cyclist, and he was one of the first people to start drinking it and was just having amazing things happening. So they went to David Neiman down at the Human Performance Labs down at Appalachian State in the Research Triangle and had him do athletic studies. So I'm reading these studies and they're amazing. They're about athletes going 12% further before they hit their ventilatory threshold. They run out of oxygen. Mice going 29% further before they're exhausted. All these huge metabolic changes that happen within 15 minutes of drinking this. And a lot of that was what I was doing. There were 8 different places on my day, my 3 or 4 times a week that I was running, where I would max myself running up the mountain. I just couldn't get enough air. And I love the feeling, it's pushing my limits and I miss it. But nonetheless, I started drinking this and I wasn't even drinking it right. I drank maybe 4 ounces on the days I would run. And within a month, I'm powering up the mountain harder and faster. At that point, I'm, 8 years. So I'm probably about 59. Yeah, I was 59. And within 3 months, a month before I turned 60, I set new personal best times for these trails. At that time, I'd been running 16 years by 20%. And then I started having all these other experiences, but it was real clear that this was enhancing athletic performance. And, it got better, and, there were other things. But, going back to what Maureen, you had asked Foster, or excuse me, Lee, you had asked Foster about as far as musculoskeletal changes. A lot of us have done that little parlor trick with the Renew 28, where you rub it under the neck and people, muscle test stronger, or things, the amount of hurting they have is reduced, not to use any inappropriate terms, but they don't have as much of that. So what's going on? Why did my performance enhance and so forth? It's real clear that this is turning on cells, youthening cells, increasing that communication. Somebody who's tense, you rub the gel on, and very uniformly, they will feel calmer in a very short amount of time. So, or their, tension will dissolve in whatever body part. So increasing this cellular communication, creating the balance that we've all been talking about, is just foundational. And I think that's why, and my performance enhanced.
Okay, I'm going to ask.
Speechless.
Oh, we were on mute. We weren't intent on hearing you.
Okay, I'm not the medical
Sorry, I have
person.
these noisy dogs.
What? Oh, your dogs.
Oh.
I'm an ex-stockbroker. I did investments. I did a lot of IPOs, initial public offerings. My question to you guys, all the medical people, this has been on the open market 12 years, approaching 12 years. Why hasn't anybody else mimicked this? Why isn't someone else coming out with the exact same thing? Lee, do you want to attempt to tackle that one?
Well, yeah,
because that's amazing to me, because when something like this comes out and it's a category creator, and yet no one has replicated this, that's fascinating to me, because that always happens in the traditional marketplace.
Well, for those of us familiar, like we are with where this came from, this spent about 17 years in a biotech research lab by a group of researchers looking to create an FDA drug classification agent to be used on some pretty intense diseases of our day. And because, as we've mentioned before, this is a bioidentical molecule, we make these natively in our own cells. These aren't foreign, they're not substitute, they are the same molecules that we make. Because of that, they're non-toxic, and one of the requirements of making a drug is to achieve what's called an LD50 classification. LD stands for lethal dose, 50 is 50%, so they put it in a laboratory situation with lab animals, and they keep increasing the dose until 50% of the sample perish. And now they know the threshold and that's a requirement that the FDA, at least in the United States, has for creating a drug. Well, that didn't happen. So all of these millions of dollars of development and all these years, it kind of looks like they were being wasted and they were running out of money. So our great founder, Vertus Norton, came out of retirement as a former vice president of strategy for a Fortune 50 company, and said, I think we're doing this wrong. We need to flip it over to the other side of the FDA, where we have different rules that apply that will allow this to be distributed, throughout the globe in any way we want. The reason why that was important is because we're all sitting here, all of us doctors, and we're thinking, but does this work for X? You decide what disease you want to name, whether it's related to your heart or your brain or your joint or whatever it is. Does it work for that? Well, in order to be able to make that claim, it's going to take somewhere in the ballpark of 10 years and $10 million, just like any other drug under development, to be able to come out at the other end, to be able to make the claim and get a drug classification that would allow you to do that. the sad part about that is if that were to occur and we wanted to take another 10 years, you pick the start date, but 10 years later, we can now finally market this, right? If you did that, then every other disease condition that might be also helped equally are off label because we didn't study them. And we need another 10 years or 10 million or whatever in order to be able to then do that. And so the great gift that this is to humanity, in my opinion, is the fact that it is not a drug. But it's kind of fun to know the backstory because this was headed in that direction. And they very wisely took this aside and placed it in a networking vehicle that allows us to tell the story because everybody's going to have a different story because everybody's cells respond the same way, but with different outcomes because of their unique situations. So now we can have 1,000 different stories be told. It almost makes it sound like a miracle, drug, a quote unquote agent. And it kind of is because it plays at that epigenetic level that is even way below the DNA level. This is the play on the DNA. This is the overlay on the DNA. That's what epigenetics stand for. It's how we in our environment and our lifestyle change how our DNA expresses itself so we can respond to life's elements and toxicities and so forth. So that's kind of the backstory. And in that regard, we're really grateful that they didn't go that way. As Foster made the comment, it's like, for me, this was like when I first heard about it, and my wife had her tremendous experience, and I learned about this. It was like, I tell people, it's like having a chicken bone sideways in my throat. This was really, really hard to swallow because of all that other stuff. And that's why this backstory, go on to amazingmolecules.com if you want to know that better. Watch the Genesis video, which talks about how this began. And you'll kind of get a more polished version of what I just discussed. But it's a gift to us that we were able to even talk about it and have it. And it saved a decade off of being able to go from where they were to the marketplace.
But Foster or Aaron, that was great, Lee, but why hasn't anybody replicated this?
Because they can't.
Why? I mean, we, here we are, we're the only company in the world that has this. We say it works on everything alive, plants, animals, humans, but yet nobody else has it. And it makes it seem like, really? You guys are really telling me that you've got this. If there's anything that sounds and smells and looks like snake oil, this is it. And I hear that all the time, and it breaks my heart. And how would you answer that, both of y'all, please?
First of all, you need to talk to different people. Second, I'm just kidding, of course. So as Lee alluded to so eloquently, this didn't start with Asea. This started 17 years before that.
Right.
So this is now 27 plus years of research and development and refining. And this is a very, very high tech, for those of us who've been able to go look behind the curtain and go into the production facility and see how this is made. This is high tech science. And there were PhDs and MDs, probably not even any DCs or DOs, I'm guessing. But these are real smart people for 27 years making this out to what it is. And you can't reverse engineer it. The molecules are too sensitive. They're too fleeting. You can't do it. People can say they have or they will, but they won't. And all they can do is start from where we started, 27 years ago. And by that time, we're going to own the world. We're already well on our way.
I totally agree with everything you said, Foster and Lee and so forth. I think, Jim, why we're not seeing yet any similar products or any, Me Too's and so forth is because of all the tremendous numbers of patents, international as well as US patents. And more recently, in the past several years, all these proprietary processes and so forth. I mean, there's a lot to the story about, why and what happened with the production of this. But, it is very heavily patented. And I think they ride pretty tight herd over anything that comes on the market that might be similar. But I love what Tyler had to say about where this is going in this redox field. And he talks about how we almost don't have a clue as to how broad this is. It has to do with everything that's energetic. And this field is just starting to be, you know, cultivated and uncovered and so forth by, you know, research and so forth. And it's getting broader and broader. And we're first to market. We've been playing in this arena for over 10 years, 11 years now. And we've got, you know, whatever analogy you want to use, this is our field. And as it expands, he uses that analogy of the keys on the piano. We're going to be able to play more and more of those keys as time goes on, because we've got this foundation. And other people are trying to jump in and get a piece of the action, or, you know, create something new. But it's an exciting prospect.
Awesome. Maureen, what do you say about that? Why didn't anybody else have it? And then, you know, we're getting close to the top of the hour. I think, Aaron, you kind of focused on it, Foster possibly as well, but how big is this? Maureen?
It's huge. You know, we're just scratching the surface, as Lee and Aaron and Foster were all saying. Number one, we have multiple patents. They're like layered patents on this. And not every step has been patented, because it's the process that's patented, not the, you know, you can't put a patent on salt water. But they, you know, intellectual property, especially when the patents run out, they can recreate some of that stuff. So I believe there's a couple of steps that have not been even patented or talked about. So there's some proprietary secrets in there. But you know what? We're just learning about this. You know, just think about in the time that we've been involved, how far we've come. You know, we joke, you've got your wand, I've got my, you know, my princess wand, because initially it just seemed like you were waving pixie dust or a magic wand, and people were drinking the salt water and getting results, and we didn't really know. Now we have the studies, especially the genetic study that gives us so many details on how, there you go, I will steal that one day. You know, how these different genes are being turned on, and how it actually impacts 5 different areas of our body, including cardiac health, gut health, your immune status, inflammation throughout the body, and hormone modulation. So you're practically covering everybody with this stuff. You know, everybody's going to feel something, or the majority of people are going to feel something. So the more we learn, and I'll tell you, you know, we now have a research center, so we're going to be learning more and more about the power of redox signaling molecules. But, you know, if you don't mind, I would love to talk about the chicken bone a little bit, because I think that's so powerful. You know, it took me a while. I was a slow learner. I guess I had gone back into training for age management medicine at the time that we were introduced to this. You know, it took me a while. I was a slow learner. I guess I'm echoing, I think. In any case, I was using it because my husband had a very big challenge. And when I realized the potential of this and how it was non-toxic and had such a profound effect on so many people, I decided that this was going to be my career, my mission, my passion, to educate people about redox. And I've never had a problem being paid for my my expertise or my education or knowledge. And this is just, to me, this is just being a doctor or a health coach in a different way, just like Dr. Malmed and Dr. Kaufman are doing. And so, and Dr. Lee, I would love, because they're all still practicing and using this with their patient population. I would love for you guys to maybe just take a minute and talk about that, about how, you know, you've reconciled that chicken bone, Lee, or if you guys had a hang up on the network marketing part.
I know Foster didn't.
I did not. I call it my wife and I call it the blessing and the curse, that it's always interested me to be full-time network marketing in the last many years. But I was trained by somebody who had been doing this for 50 years, and now I'm doing it for almost 40. So Aaron would tell you I have almost 90 years experience. And so I love doing that. I love changing lives in ways that couldn't be changed from a purely musculoskeletal or neuromuscular way. And then when I add this, it just augments it. So I get to experience all of it all of my passions in one place in my office downstairs. So it just adds, it augments everything that I do.
Another arrow in your quiver.
If not,
Aaron, I know you had, yeah, really. Aaron, I know you had a couple issues with the chicken bone. You're muted. You're muted, sir.
I was tremendously network marketing averse, had bad experiences with misrepresentation and outright lying and hype and so forth with companies in the 80s and 90s. And I basically for 15 years said never again. And people were bringing me the latest, greatest juice and antioxidants, zeolites and all that. And I would say, is it network marketing? They'd say yes. And I said, absolutely not. When Dr. Edmonds brought me Asea, said, is it network marketing? She said, yes. I said, absolutely not. And I was serious. She gave me research articles for a year and a half, and that helped to, whatever analogy you want to use, soften the chicken bone, widen my throat. I started to understand more. But, you know, for me, Jim, it was the experience of having all these results, like so many people. And, you know, so it gets us down to this concept of, you know, and we've all done this. You can spend weeks and months explaining this and getting research to people. But once they have that experience, boom, you know, they transition. And that was what happened with me.
For me, networking, you know, the research was really important because I had to know that this was real. I had to know that redox signaling was a foundational principle in cellular biology, but also on the economic side, you know, we've all been through this last 12, 18 months, a pretty big roller coaster, not just here, but everywhere around the world. And I was closed down. My income stopped. And I know a lot of people's incomes stopped. And so the question is, well, what are you going to do instead of? Do you need, and I think there's wisdom in having additional sources of income. I think there's a special wisdom in recognizing that you can leverage yourself vertically through a networking model that you can't do in any other way. People say, well, I'm going to do real estate. And it's like, go knock yourself out, but it isn't passive. You're still a landlord. You've still got issues.
Right.
And this isn't exactly that either, but it's different in that it does create residual, but it does it because you're leveraging the efforts of many people who are just as sold on this as we are personally within our own families as to why we would continue to order this. And you start to play that down multiple levels and generations, and that's where your income comes from. So, you know, I think all of the above for me, was helpful in massaging that chicken bone.
Awesome. Well, guys, we're towards the end. I just want to show you guys a couple pictures real quick of validation for what we have. And this is Coach Rose Monday, USA Track and Field. And she's been on these molecules now for 4 years. She was supposed to have both of her knees replaced, and she did not. But here's the latest one. Meet Kendra Chambers. Do you notice what she has in her hands? She just last weekend qualified for the U.S. Olympic trials. The Olympics are going to be coming up July 23rd is when they start. She is an Asea athlete. And you're not going to get those kind of people, along with doctors, Kaufman and Foster, and with Dr. Maureen and Dr. Lee, and all the other hundreds of doctors that are joining this. This is real. And that's exactly why we do this meeting every Friday night, to help validate this to the entire world. So with that, guys, gals, thank you so much. Ann, and Lee, who do we have next week? Lee, you have a guest, and then Ann's got a guest. Who is that, Lee?
Next week, we have Dr. Ray Dixon from Thailand, who is a naturopath / chiropractor, very well informed in all these principles.
Awesome. I have Dr. Yanni Feliciano from California, and she's a chiropractic, and she's an author, and she's also involved in energy medicine. So it should be a great duo. We're looking forward to that. And I know, Malmed, we ran out of time about the dosage, but I will post on United in the thread. You have an awesome video on graduating up dosage for
Yeah.
somebody. It really is
Yeah,
excellent.
very excellent. We
Because if
will,
people don't use enough, they won't see their number of what's going to give them the most optimal health and the signaling they need. So
guys,
thank you.
thank you. We appreciate it. Stick around for Stevie and Danny. The Aussies are coming on right after this, and we thank you so much for your time. God bless.
Thanks, y'all.
And
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye,
Have a
everybody.
great
See
night.
you next
God
week.
bless.
You know, I think
Sir,
that
thank
went
you.
even, I think that went even better than the rehearsal.
What rehearsal?
We should rehearse.
The one you and I weren't invited to, Lee.
Yeah, really.
That's
all right, guys.
hilarious.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so
Bye,
much.
everybody.
Bye,
Thanks so much.
everybody.
This
Love
was
you
fun.
guys. Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Thank
Good night.
you.